Looks like it's going to me. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, happy Thursday. My name is Hillary Loxon, and I'm the founder of this group, Warrior Parents of Dyslexics. And today I have with us on the show Kristina Campos, who has a company called The Impactful Parent out of Colorado, which she started because, like everybody in the dyslexia sphere, she wanted to help make a difference for what she learned with her child and other children along the way. So today we're going to talk about successful parenting tips, and she's going to give you 3 tips and then tell you a little bit about her family story and how this came to be. So take it away, Kristina.
Thank you for having me on, Hillary, first of all. I appreciate it.
We're glad to have you. We always like to talk to another person.
Yeah, well, I have a long story too, because, it's a journey when you have a dyslexic child, and, it is definitely a journey. So let me tell you, I'm a single mom of 4 kids, first of all. And my oldest son is the one that is dyslexic, and he's very dyslexic. And for years, I could not put my finger on why certain behaviors were happening, why he didn't like to read. Why I couldn't even get him to learn the alphabet when he was in preschool. Like, we fought over it. And I thought he was just being stubborn. And hindsight is always 20/20. And looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I wish I would have known. I wouldn't have been so hard on him. And first of all, I just want to tell your parents, we are all just doing our best, and you have to give yourself grace, because even impactful parents do not do things right the first time around. And so it's about being impactful. It's about learning and growing in your parenting skills. And I definitely had to do that with my dyslexic child. And today we're thriving. So I want to tell you about that. So exciting.
That's a great story. I always tell people that dyslexia is kind of like a war that's fought battle by battle to get to the end, and that you're not going to solve it all in one day. And if you go in with the mentality that you're going to figure it all out right now, that's not happening.
No, it's not. And which is perfect segue, because my tip number 1 to be an impactful parent of a dyslexic child is, first thing you got to do is figure out what you're dealing with, because dyslexia is a spectrum, and there's lots of different places on that spectrum. And can I tell you, oh my goodness, the journey of that was probably the toughest, most frustrating, most agonizing journey of being a parent that I could say of one of the things that I've been through. And there's always something that seems to couple with dyslexia, not always, but it just seems like really, really often. And so for my son, the first signs I saw was his extreme activity. And at first I thought, well, maybe he has ADHD or something, but he didn't. Actually, he had sensory processing disorder, or still does. And that was coupled with our dyslexia. And when you have more than one issue that you're trying to figure out what's going on, I think that even just makes everything a little bit more complicated, as if dyslexia wasn't complicated enough all on its own. There's just always something, it seems like, that always couples with it. And for us, it was sensory processing disorder. So I started seeing things in the beginning. I said he didn't want to learn his alphabet. He didn't want, he was a super, super active kid. And it turns out that he was sensory seeking. So he needs more input for him particularly. And sitting down to read, not a lot of input for him, on top of being very difficult. So talk about a double whammy of not something you really want to do as a kid. And he couldn't understand why he had to learn how to read. To him, in his very early 5-year-old brain, why do I need to learn how to read? It'll be fine. Because he didn't really see the value in it. And so it was an uphill battle. But through that, as I'm trying to figure out exactly what I'm dealing with, and nobody would tell me, nobody could give me a pinpoint, and nobody labeled it dyslexia, let me tell you. As a very, very active parent, taking him to eye tracking for help, getting tested in the public schools, trying to get the IEPs. We went to what in Colorado is called the STAR Center, which is for sensory processing disorder, to help with that. We went to pediatric evaluations through our doctor. I'd had him take achievement tests. The poor kid's seen more psychologists than any average person for sure. We went to reading specialists like Lyndon Mood Bell to help us with things. We went to speech therapy. We went to, like the list is long.
Right.
And that doesn't even count like reading tutors. But through all of that, nobody could really pinpoint exactly what was going on. And I just want to tell the parents, like, I know you want this to be black and white. I know you want this just to like somebody just to tell you so that you can work toward fixing it. And I hope that's what you get, but that is not what I got, and at all. And so you are not alone in being frustrated, not understanding what's happening, just so much wanting to help your child, but feeling helpless because you don't know what to do. And so just number one tip, don't give up on that, trying to figure out what the real issue is and to keep going back to the help, keep trying to get tested until you can get a much more clearer picture, and never giving up on that help. And I know it's expensive, and I know like I said, it's just agonizing for you and your child, who probably gets exhausted from all the people they have to see and all the effort they have to put in. But this is just where you become their biggest cheerleader, and you just got to support them as much as you possibly can, and show them your real feelings. It's okay to show them that you're frustrated and that you're also tired of taking them to all the appointments, because that makes you real, and it shows you that you're the parent that, yeah, I'm tired, but I'm not ever going to give up on you. And that alone is being very impactful to your child. So that's my main tip number one. Like, just, you can do this. Don't give up. You're not alone. I know it's frustrating.
That's a good tip. I mean, that's what I tell people too. You can quit, but you have to get up every day. So if you want to quit every day, go ahead. But tomorrow you better get back up.
That's right. You absolutely do. And that's what you need to do. And it's just a long journey. And I wish it wasn't, but the reality is that it is. And if you know that, I feel like if anybody watching this can see that and say, okay, these other parents have gone before me. And yes, I definitely could be that biggest cheerleader for my son or my daughter, then you're doing the right thing. And you just, again, keep waking up. Just like you said, keep waking up, keep doing it. So my second tip to be an impactful parent of a dyslexic child is really to kind of take your mind and you got to do a mind shift on everything, and not just for you, but help your child take this challenge, because reading is everywhere, and reading is so important in school and in life. And our stupid society has made it so that reading equals being successful. Now, I don't believe that, but that's like the main, that's the message that gets across to the majority of our population. So it's about really, really ensuring your child to take the mind shift that this challenge that you have of not liking or not being able or having a difficulty of reading, to not let it define who they are. And it's about creating for your child a super security system that they can rely on. So it's not just about them being able to rely on you to take them for help all the time, but it's also that, again, you're and your biggest fan, but that your child can be heard somewhere when the going gets tough, and they also want just to throw their hands up in the air. To be that empathetic ear, to say, you can't, I'm not dyslexic, so I can't say, oh, I know what that feels like. No, and I'm not even going to try, but I can say, man, I hear you, and I see how hard you're working, And I know this isn't easy for you, but if you need help from me and I can help you in any way possible, I want to do that. And then not letting this challenge define who they are, which is really happens in school. I see it. I've been an educator for over 20 years, and I've had numerous dyslexic children throughout my classroom time. And it's not letting those students get defined by this learning difference that they have, that they're not any less smart or capable than anyone else in the room. They just have a different challenge, but everybody has a challenge. Theirs happens to be in the classroom when we're reading. To make things more interesting, I'm a language teacher. So I saw it all the time, and it was like night and day who had these differences and who didn't. And it was about really supporting that student in the room, saying, we're going to figure this out. Maybe you have to test auditory with more auditory testing. Maybe you have to do just more speaking exams instead of written. Maybe I need to put my voice on a I used to do it on tape. That's how old I am. But on a recording, and so that you can listen to the dialogue instead of having to read it. And working with your teachers so that it doesn't define who they are. Because once you figure out that there's an issue, it really becomes one of your missions as a parent to keep revisiting it every single time somebody new comes into their life. That means every single year that they get a new teacher, or even at semester when they switch classes, it's about talking to those teachers and not advocating for your child, but make sure that your child is right there advocating with you, not doing things for them, but doing things with them. And that's really big. And I'm going to say that again. Don't do things for them, do things with them. So don't have a parent-teacher conference, have a parent-teacher-student conference, so that they also learn how to advocate for themselves and to be able to talk to an adult, so that they can say, yeah, that's really difficult for me, but this is something I can do. And so it's a journey again through that also.
That's a really interesting idea. I mean, I know people in high school say to bring the student to the IEP meeting, but what age do you recommend that the child is involved? Because when they're really little, I feel like sometimes the child is used as a block to make the school not necessarily do what they would.
I think it's up to the discretion of the parent, but I had my son next to me as early as possible. And we talk about his learning difference outwardly. He doesn't shame away from it because of it now. He knows it's just part of who he is. And we don't talk about it shamefully either. It's just, this is who you are. We need to get you extra help. Come on with me. We're walking in to talk to the adults so that they can understand where you're coming from. And I bring him in. And yeah, I think when he was really little, it was like, and he didn't say much, but he sat there and just listened, and that's okay. But as he got older, I kept trying to bring him into the conversation and say, so what do you think that you need help with? How do you think the teacher could help you? What do you think you're really good at? And I would literally put him into the conversation with the adult there, so that he can learn to advocate for himself, but still in a safe space where I'm right there with him, and I'm going to be there to support him. I'm going to fight for him. I'm right there, but I'm letting him talk. And I think that's really big. You let your child talk for themselves instead of you're still being mama bear, right? But you don't want to be over too much and cast shadow upon your child. So there's a balance there. Instead, you want to put your child right in front of you, but have their back and say, I'm right here. If you need to fall, I got you. And that's more of the the kind of parenting I'm trying to encourage.
I love that. I think for us, that was very hard to get my child to do. She did not want to sit in an IEP meeting. She would not speak. She wouldn't say anything. And now we work on that.
Yeah, and that's okay. Like some kids aren't ready yet, and some kids don't feel comfortable yet. But just like with anything you do in life, the more you do it, the more exposure you have to it, the more practice you have, it becomes more comfortable. And unless you expose and you practice, it will never be comfortable. So all those meetings, I drag them along, and no, they'll start to speak up in their own time when they're ready. And I wouldn't force it, but I would bring them there whenever you could. Whenever
that is a really good tip, I think, trying to teach them to, because I mean, we know that the statistic says that it's possible they're going to have kids and their kids have a 50% chance of also being dyslexic. So they're going to have to learn how to deal with that when it happens to their family.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a lot of ways, I envy that, because at least you have the empathy to be able to identify what maybe your child might be going through. I didn't have that. And I mean, I don't wish dyslexia upon myself, but I do wish I had the empathy to be able to understand what that was like, so that I could have maybe even supported him more and better.
Right. Yeah, I'm not dyslexic either. People in my family are, but I'm not.
Yeah. And then the third tip I have for parents really is just to, as they get older and they do pick an interest, is really support them in their passion, in their interest. For a dyslexic kid, it may not be a conventional path. For example, right now, the big thing is like, STEM, or I'm going to be an engineer, I'm going to be, all these typical
Coding.
kinds of professions. For my son, I saw him spark with movie making, and it started with him just trying to make like stop motion videos and stuff, and I kind of just like, oh yeah, that's cute, and kids go through all kinds of phases and try on lots of things and try on different hats and stuff. But there was a point when I sat him down and as a sophomore in high school and said, what do you really care about? We need to start honing your passion and really having that conversation with him, so that he can start to really focus on one thing and get really good at it. And that really good thing that you're really good at becomes part of their identity. And when that becomes part of their identity, then the challenges in their life become a little less a part of their identity. It ends up being a challenge that they have to overcome or whatever, but who they are is this other bigger passion that they have. So then hopefully by the time that they're older teenagers, the hope is you've cheered them on to be the best they could be, even with this learning difference when they were younger, that by now they're 15, 16, 17 years old. You can now switch your cheerleader focus to the passion and saying, that's your passion. I'm going to support you 100% on your passion. Let's make that happen. And I know for some other people, members of my family, when I was supporting my son in his movie making, it was movie making. Okay, that's a really hard profession to break into. And even my son was like, I don't know, I'm getting a lot of pushback from the family and he cares what other people think. And I sat him down again and said, no, this is your passion. You really enjoy this, right? Yeah, I really enjoy this. Well, then this is really what you enjoy, this is what you love, then don't look at it in such a narrow-minded set. Let's open it up a little bit. Maybe you're not going to be the next Steven Spielberg. That's okay. But could you make commercials? Could you make podcasts? Could you make all these other things that require video and recording and video editing and animation and things? Could you do any of those? Well, yeah, I could. Okay, well, there's a lot of those kind of professions out there. Do you want to shoot for being the next Spielberg? Awesome. But if you realize that that's a very narrow goal, like a professional athlete, but maybe you're happy just being a coach, and then let's continue with it. You can do this. We can hone this talent. And we kept working at it and kept working at it. And to this day, he's very excited. He's 18 now. We're a senior in high school. And now we're looking at colleges that will support his major, along with looking at colleges that are small enough that's going to make him feel comfortable in a classroom at college, have the support systems that he needs in order to feel comfortable with his learning difference. So that will be the next part of my journey, is helping my son move beyond the high school and into an environment where he'll be completely independent, but also supported in his new environment. So that's gonna be a whole other thing to tackle for me.
Yeah, that is going to be a fun ride for you guys, going to look at colleges and figuring out where he's best served.
Yeah. And
so real quick, will you repeat your tips again?
Okay, so the first one was figure out what you're dealing with, know exactly what kind of dyslexia, how bad it is, what are the real challenges in that? Is it a connection between the comprehension part, or is it, mixing things up? What, it's a spectrum, so
figure it out.
Tip number 2 is take your mindset and shift it so that you can not let this challenge define you, your child, and create that environment of security that they can fall upon you for support no matter what. And the third tip I gave is really, really support them in discovering their passion, and so that the focus is no longer about the lack of being able to do a certain skill and more about the gift that they have, that they're meant to be someday when they get older.
Those are really good tips. It's funny that you say figure it out, because that's probably something I've been saying since I was like 10. Like, that's my response to everything, figure it out. But I think that it's really important for parents to understand that a lot of people think that you're just dyslexic, and it's extremely uncommon to be only having one, diagnosis, because of how complex it is to develop dyslexia. And so I think a lot of parents stop digging when they get labeled with dyslexia, and they miss some other things, like you're talking about, the sensory processing disorder, or ADHD, or auditory processing disorder. And a lot of those other things isn't what makes you be able to figure out your child, because you have to understand everything you're dealing with.
It really is. That's why that's step 1, because it's very much, the majority of people, a multi-layer process, and you got to keep digging. It's been really hard. Even to this day, he still struggles with the sensory processing disorder. You wouldn't tell by looking at him. He has developed over many years, at being 18, how to cope with not having the input that he needs. But man, does that kid like to be touched and held and squeezed. And to this day, it's even kind of comical. We laugh about it because we call it hug power. He's one of 4 kids, and he's the oldest, and he's a man. He's 18. He's way taller than me. He's way bigger. He's a man. And he keeps asking all the rest of us for hug power. We just need to hug him and hold him for a little while, because it just makes him feel better.
Well, I think that is fairly common with dyslexia in general, because my child's like that, and I am not by any means the person that's jumping up and live for a hug. Like, people force hug me.
Yeah.
So that's funny that it's relatable that they're both like that. My daughter likes headphones on, like in the airport, because she doesn't like all the stuff going on, but you're saying he likes all the stuff happening.
Yeah, well, sensory processing disorder is also a spectrum, and on one end you're sensory seeking, and on the other end you're sensory overload. So those kids don't like They don't like lights. They don't like loud music. They don't like, big booms noises, big crowds. They don't like big crowds. And that's a whole other ball game, ball of wax for you too. So
I think the other thing you said that I was just talking about the other day to some parents was trying to figure out what they're good at. And you totally become the parent that's like, kite surfing, sign you up, coding, sign you up. Like, let's build a rocket at school. Like, you do all this crazy stuff because you really have no idea what they're gonna like or be good at, because it's so, huge what it could be with somebody who's dyslexic and is like, they're thinking about how to get to the moon, and everybody's like, but wait, you can't get to the moon. Like, they're so higher IQ in general, and so
absolutely
out of the box. Like, I mean, look at Steve Jobs, and Steven Spielberg, like you said, is dyslexic.
Yeah, I through the classroom, I found that my dyslexic kids were some of the most interesting and innovative thinkers that I've ever ran into. And I enjoyed them thoroughly in the classroom because they do think outside of the box. And it's so fun to watch their brain just like and go here and go there. And it's just only a matter of being able to put it down here on a paper or on it. So recording it somehow. And because all these wonderful thoughts, they
disappear fast, especially with the ones that have memory problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the problem with mine, because when you're like, you first start parenting, right? And whether it's your first kid or not, you'll always have the kid, they're like, mommy, I want this, mommy, I want that, whatever they're saying to you all day. And at some point you're like, just a minute, and they teach you in quote normal parenting to tell them like, just wait a minute, just a minute. But like with my child, I cannot do that, because if I do that, she will not remember what she wanted or needed for 5 minutes.
Oh,
and that's hard to learn, to like be like, okay, wait, you're talking, I have to pay attention no matter what you're saying, and like write it down and then come back to you later.
Yeah.
Which is not normal parenting, right? I mean, that's not how you condition a typical, non-neurodiverse child.
That's right. You learn how to make a lot of accommodations, but it's just part of the journey.
Right? So how did you figure out what he was good at? Was it like a game of just, I'm going to sign you up for a bunch of stuff and see what happens? Or you push something you thought might work? Or
yeah, I let him be the guy. Whatever he was interested in, we made sure that he got an opportunity to try it out. And the movie making stuff actually was all on his own. There wasn't a class. He didn't have to do anything after school to go and do that. It was just a way for him to pass time. He thought, I could do that. I can make a movie. And sure enough, it started off with little Lego figures and just one frame at a time. It's so painful to me as a thing. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of work. But he really enjoyed his end product and was so proud of it. And then
when you have to wonder, like, would that have been something he was interested in had he not been 5 when the iPhone came out and like the world of personal movie making and stuff took off? Because if that wasn't the world, then maybe that wouldn't have been what he chose, because it never would have been accessible.
Yeah, that's true. And maybe it would have been different. Maybe it would have been photography or anything like that.
So then talk about your other children, because I know you have multiple kids, and sometimes people get a lot of dyslexics in their family, sometimes they don't. So what did the rest of your family
turn out? It's amazing how you can have 4 kids and they're all different. Yeah. So the second one in line is very, very, very gifted. Completely academically, completely probably the opposite. Doesn't have the creative brain like my oldest dyslexic child, but has a much more engineering, mathematical, linear brain. And with that child, I have learned a lot about the struggles of anxiety and depression and identity issues. And so that's been a journey in itself. This is why I can talk on so many different areas and subjects. It's my 4 children give me a run for my money. The next one in line has the same kind of brain as the other one, that linear,
Right.
mathematical type of brain. That one, though, did have a little bit of trouble with reading. You could say that you could label it as dyslexic also. But the reading difference how do I explain it? It's a little unusual because his IQ is so high, but his reading ability was at grade level. So it's not diagnosed as being a learning disability because he can read, he was able to read at grade level, but there is more than 2 standard deviations between his IQ and his ability. Therefore, it is considered a learning difference because he should be able to read at this level and he was not. So, but because I had my oldest dyslexic child, I was able to really get him the help he needed probably a lot easier and a lot better. So he's narrowing this gap very, very quickly. And again, that's just from experience. The oldest one paved the way. So
Paid the price too, probably.
absolutely he did. And he's so patient, and it made him very resilient to this day, which I wouldn't take any of it back. He's an amazing human being due to all the challenges that he's had, but it wasn't easy for him. And then my last,
more, right?
yeah, my last child is to be seen. She actually doesn't like to read.
Okay.
But it doesn't appear so far like there's any difficulty with it. I think there might just be a lack of interest. It's hard to tell when you're learning how to. She's only in 2nd grade.
Okay.
So it's just now starting to get into that reading type
Right.
of
Where you
area.
can't hide it as well.
Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of those learning differences, as you know, they come up a lot in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. Because that's the turning point in school when you start not reading for fun, but reading to learn.
Correct.
So the comprehension part is super, super important. And if you're having comprehension issues, that's when it's going to really rear its head up. So
those are like, you got an amazing realm of kids. Like, I think you were given all those kids to be able to teach you things to help change this world and change this space. I mean, those are really dramatically different children.
Yes, and Hillary, that's exactly why I thought so too. I was like, there's a reason why I'm going through all this. And I've always been a helper and a teacher. So when I decided to quit teaching, it wasn't because I didn't love the classroom. It wasn't because I didn't love the children. It was because I saw that my teenagers needed me more now than they ever did when even they were younger. I really needed to be there for them. And since I don't have their dad with me in the same house, but I am a primary caregiver to them. Their dad is still definitely in their life, so don't get me wrong there, but I just felt like I needed to be there more than I was. I had to stop my focus from taking care of everybody else's children and really start focusing on my own.
Which is hard, right? I have that problem sometimes where I'm like, I gotta save this one kid or help this one parent. And I'm like, wait, I got a kid at home.
Yeah, it is
a hard choice to make.
But when it hit, I was like, okay, I have to make a shift. And I couldn't just stop helping people. So with the 4 kids and all the experience I've had in education, teaching 1st grade through high school for so many years, I know a lot about kids. And I've been around them my whole life. And I love them. So it was.
You went back and got a master's, right? In education or in what?
I actually got my master's in project management.
Oh, cool.
I wanted to, that's when I had the idea of maybe founding the Impactful Parent. And I wanted to make sure that I could run a business, that I could.
So tell people if they want to work with you, like what you do for parents or how you can help them or how they can work with you.
Absolutely. So the Impactful Parent is actually a free online platform. All you have to do is come and look at me up on Facebook. It's at The Impactful Parent. There is a the there, The Impactful Parent. And I put out free tips and advice and give free resources all the time. If you want a free resource right now, you can go to the website, theimpactfulparent.com. All kinds of free resources on there, 30-day challenges. I offer a drug, how to identify if your child's on drug program, behavior management programs for kids with anxiety and depression, or not depression, anxiety and anger management issues. And yeah, all kinds of great stuff. So come on over.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then you do like mentoring, but you're not an advocate, right? Or you do some advocate work or no?
So I will do some parental coaching when you take the behavior management course.
Okay.
That I can work with you one-on-one and your child when they have anxiety or anger management. And really that whole thing is about teaching the parent how to help their child control their big emotions.
Talk about that real quick, because a lot of people don't know about the high rate of anxiety and depression in kids with learning disabilities and how that manifests into you being labeled as a behavior problem when your problem is really that you can't read. Like, how do parents
Exactly.
recognize signs of that?
Yeah. So what I do it's a completely online course. And what I do is I help the parents identify what really are the triggers, what's really the issue that's underhand. Because although you're seeing, let's say, anger from your kid, frustrating, getting trouble at school, what's really happening is underneath all of that, there's something else happening. So it's about trying to identify what's all those other things happening. Is it they're not feeling secure? Is it that they're afraid of something that's going to happen or will happen or how it's going to end up? Like there could be a slew of other emotions. And then once we get past identifying the issues and the triggers, I teach parents how to help their children control those big emotions. So we go through processes of learning how to cope, giving them coping skills, learning like actually teaching your child how to increase their tolerance level when they get frustrated, because they will get frustrated. So it's about increasing their tolerance level so that they don't blow their top out, and instead they could get frustrated but not, because you're not going to take away feelings. Feelings are natural. It's about controlling the feelings so that they don't overtake you and make you do things that are crazy. And because what happens, especially with kids that are really frustrated, is they become impulsive, and impulsivity turns into things that are dangerous. And now they're doing things at school or at home or wherever that aren't your kid. So this is what happens when the parents are looking at their child and they're like, wait a second, who is this? You never did that before. Why are you acting out now? And it's about finding out why they're acting out, help them go through that process, and then learning how to control those emotions so they don't get impulsive. Because if you get to impulsivity, teenagers in general, they'll be impulsive by nature because they just don't have a completely developed brain. And you couple that with anger or something, and now your child could be putting themselves into danger. So to me, it's a real passion of mine to help your child early with that so that they don't put themselves in a dangerous situation. They keep their emotions in check.
Well, and that's what happens so much because, I mean, like you were saying, you have to read to do everything in life. Everything is a sign to read, to tell you what to do, where to go, how to get somewhere, who to talk to, which building to go in. But if you can't read, how are you supposed to function? I mean, yeah, I can use my phone, and if I wait 30 seconds, it's going to download and tell me what they're saying, but that's a hard way to have to live. And I think a lot of parents miss that sign of like, why did your kid's personality entirely change and what's the problem? Like, unless you have trauma, there's usually not a logical explanation for it.
Right.
Besides a learning disability.
Yeah, and this program helps parents go through that. It's not for a kid who has got trauma. It's about a kid that is dealing with something in their life, just like this, whether it's a learning difference or whatever other kind of insecurity or whatever is happening, to control that big emotion so that they they're safe, really. So, and if you're interested in that, you would go to theimpactfulparent.com/webinar, and that gives you a free webinar that just talks about the program, and that's absolutely free. Just I talk about the program to see if it's a good fit for you or not.
That's awesome. I really like that. I mean, because that is the problem, right? People know something's wrong, but they really just don't know where to go. Kind of like when they tell you your kid's dyslexic and then they hand you some 4-page pamphlet like that fixes the problem.
Right.
So what would be your number one tip for someone who just found out that they're dyslexic besides, figuring it out? Like, do you tell people to go get a private tutor, or do you tell them to go to counseling, or what do you suggest for parents that just found out?
I would try to go to, oh geez, that's a great question. Because I mean, where do you want to go? I took my kids to go get help immediately, just to start. It feels better for you as a parent, like when you're being proactive, even if it's not really the right place for them at the time, you can always switch that, but it feels better to you when you're not being placid. So it depends on what avenue you want to go, whether it's just a tutor to help them get through some of the homework just for at school, because some of the day-to-day stuff is a little bit more frustrating sometimes than some of the bigger issues. So it could be as little as having somebody read aloud to them certain assignments. Actually, we have websites on all of that. If your community doesn't know about snapandread.com, they should definitely go there. That has lots of, it reads to them. Reading Ally is an amazing resource online where it provides thousands of books online, including textbooks that reads out loud to your child so that they can hear it instead of having to read it. And what I like about it is you can read along with it still, so you don't have to be just listening. One of my favorite websites that my oldest son uses is, let's see, it's ttreader.com. ttsreader.com. That's it. ttsreader.com. And another one that works just the same is naturalreaders.com. And what that does is he takes his own writing. Okay, so when he has to write an essay for something, he takes his own writing, he cuts and pastes it into this website, and then the website reads it back to him as it highlights the words as it's reading back to him. And what that allows him to do is listen for weird sentence structure, wording that might be off. So he's become a better writer through websites like ttsreader.com or naturalreaders.com because he can edit his own work that way.
That's awesome. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's really, really been helpful to him.
That's the problem with so many people's writing, right? They write it and they don't see the errors.
Yeah, and it'll highlight for him exactly what it's reading. So when he catches it, he go, oh, where is that? And it's already highlighted for him. So then he could change the wording there. And then it's nice to hear your work being said out loud to you back again. So again, you can hear it instead of having to see it. It doesn't do like grammatical errors, but it will if you misspell.
You can use Grammarly for that afterwards.
Exactly. And if you misspell something really bad, it won't recognize the letter or the word to say it out loud to you. Therefore, something's misspelled.
That's super cool. I'll have to go check that one out because we're not using that one, but that would be helpful for us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I think it's nice to have some positivity brought to dyslexia and not have the, ER rain cloud over your whole world for 18 years. I think you gave parents some really good tips. And I think the most important one is probably the whole mission of your company is to find what you're good at it and excel at it.
That's right. Well, thank you for
anything else you want to say besides go visit impactfulparent.com or theimpactfulparent.com?
No, just you're the biggest cheerleader. You can do this, parents. You can do it.
As my friend says, you got this.
Yep, you got this.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.